Next up we have, that's going to be queued up, we have an ongoing discussion on our grading policy. As you know, last time I introduced the grading policy, or now we call it the Achievement and Student Success Policy, as it's a rather large policy. Last time I spoke to you regarding grading scales. Tonight, myself and Dr. Drolet will talk to you about homework and also academic honesty. I'll start with the first piece, the policy. If you might just scan to the academic honesty or cheating plagiarism section, section C, I'll take you through that. Essentially, in this section, we're really looking to know what the students know and are able to do. We also want to make sure we consequence students who are, in fact, cheating. So, in doing that, we had a lot of discussions in our panel over how you get at that. And I think in our conversations, we really had two camps where some folks felt there was differentiation, like a misdemeanor and a felony in terms of maybe cheating with like homework versus the term paper, and some folks felt it was a sin. A sin's a sin. So we had a lot of conversations on that and really tried to figure out how can we really get at this. In the end, we differentiated between elementary, middle, and high school. You can see at the elementary level, certainly if a student is not honest, we want to involve the parent meeting, principal, and certainly have the student do the work over again at home, and bring it back in. But in the end, we certainly want a consequence at this level, the meeting, but also we want to have them submit the work and see what they can do. At the middle level, we go a bit further, and if someone was dishonest at that level, the secondary level, certainly a principal meeting with the guardians, possible detention, redoing of the work, earning the grade that's representative of what they know and able to do. Here's why it's different. I'll tell you, right now at the high school we have a procedure, not a policy, where if a student is caught cheating on, say, a major paper or test, they would redo it, get a grade, then average in a 0. So in essence, you would get an 80 and a 0, you have 40. That's not really representative of what the student knows. Historically, I grew up that way. We get a 0, and folks call that the Pontius Pilate School of Education. But we really have to get away from that. All the experts would say that's not good practice, but it does, I think, depart from how we were raised in terms of the 0. In these protocols, we're looking to really certainly consequence students. It could be detention, it could be in-school suspension, it could be a Saturday experience. But in the end, we want them to do the work and give them what they know and are able to do. That's really, I think, the context of this. Also, I know some folks would ask, well, if the student did it right the first time, aren't they being penalized if the other student gets to do it? Well, I would say the student who did it right the first time is inconsequential on Saturday, or in school suspended, having a parent come in. If the student's on NHS and it's a major consequence, they're probably off NHS because that's a violation of the honor code. So there are consequences that do kick in here. So I think we're trying to balance it. So that's how we came out with that. The second part of the conversation tonight, I'd like to Dr. Drolet talk about homework. Rich, take it away, please.
Good evening. I'll just talk about the homework portion of the policy. Basically, it outlined, and I'd like to give credit, I worked in collaboration with Coventry, in particular Coventry Middle School. They have a similar homework policy. But basically, it outlines the purpose of homework. There's 4 reasons for homework. Homework is either to prepare for something, to check for understanding, to practice something, or it's to an extension of learning. Some of the guiding beliefs around homework is to provide feedback to the teacher. And really the purpose of grading, the essence of this whole policy is the purpose of grading is to provide feedback for improved student performance. I think we lose sight of that often. We often think of grading as something you do to a student. It's summative, it's the end, it's a judgment. The purpose of grading is really to provide feedback to improve student performance, for the teacher and the student to learn things. And so anyway, homework is to be reported. Homework is also a learner quality. It's a process. So some of the highlights is that homework's not completed. We're not just going to give a 0. We can give an incomplete, and then the appropriate consequence will be to complete that homework. Alternative or mandated remediation, or for a student to have to do the homework, would be something consistent if they do not do it, rather than just give a 0 and that's it, they got away with not doing it. A student should be provided with additional opportunities to submit homework where reasonable and appropriate. So again, not just giving a 0 and not having to do the work. And basically, homework is either a process or a product. It's normally should be a process, and a process grade is a learner quality grade, which should be reported on a report card as homework. For example, a rubric. Student consistently does their homework and completes their homework. Student missed 1 or 2 homework assignments but routinely does it. Student missed a number. It should be reported that way. Right now, homework can either significantly inflate or deflate a grade, and some teachers don't even know the impact depending on how they might average it or the weight of it. Right now, some teachers might have homework, whether they're accounting for 40% of a grade, and if a student doesn't do well but is an overachiever, that can inflate the grade. And if a student really knows the content and is proficient but does not do the work, that can significantly decrease the grade. They could fail even though they might be proficient in an area. So again, homework as preparing for something, that's a process. It should be reported as a learner quality. To check for understanding, that's a process grade. To practice, that's a process. And an extension of learning is an example of that can be still graded. Part of the homework portion of the grading policy, or the student achievement and success policy, it does say it can be graded as long as students and teachers inform students when homework would be counted as a product, not just a process, but as a product grade. So if the teacher announces and lets the students know. For example, it could be a take-home project or an assignment, maybe a take-home quiz. It's a product. It's something that can be graded, but it should be announced from the teacher to the student, and also should count for no more than 15% of an overall grade. And then lastly, the homework policy outlines that there's student responsibility, teacher responsibility, parent responsibility, and the school and district responsibility. We're all in this together for homework. So that's kind of a summary. If anyone has any questions, feel free.
Questions? Any questions? Ms. Jill?
Just, when we had talked about this in policy as one of the consequences for cheating, I don't see it reflected in here, but I know we talked about it, was that not only could you be eliminated from honor society or student government, but it would also include sports.
We don't have that in here yet, but I'm welcome to have that conversation at the table and see how you want to incorporate that in. How to work.
Anyone else? Just on that homework, as far as not counting for more than 15%, but yet, the overall discussion was that it doesn't really reflect the proficiency. So what's the reason? I know we did discuss that briefly in policy as well. Why is there any sort of ability to have 15%?
I can try.
I think in the conversations, I would tell you overall this policy draft is very progressive. In the purest sense, we talked to any national thinker on this, they say don't count it at all. You're absolutely correct. But I think there are small steps to be made. I think right now to get everyone to agree on 15 is a step in the right direction. And if you want to be really authentically just accurate, it'd be 0. I think this is the one place where they still wanted to have it come for something. On the other hand, for the cheating piece, they're going completely research-based, saying full value, which is very, very different. So I think to get every piece and every policy completely progressive is probably a challenge. I think it's kind of like going with this pace at which the school department can go. But we did have some talk around 10%. Some folks wanted to go with lower. We had debates on that. But I think in the end, that was kind of like the first go-around. Saying, we could live with 15, but some camps saying don't count it at all, some counting it more. That's how it kind of played out.
Okay, thank you. Mr.
Then I have a personal question. What about projects or papers? Is that homework or is that separate?
Well, if you look at the, if you can go back, Mr. Chandler, to under expectations there, right there at the bottom, A, B, C, D. Homework is either to prepare for something, to check for understanding, to practice, or an extension of learning. And if it's an extension of learning, that could be counted as a grade. For example, if it's something that, the teacher, it's a take-home form of grading, the student has the opportunity to go home and put that information together, and project would certainly fall in that category.
So is that part of that 15% then, or is that something separate from the 15%?
I would say that it's part of the
Okay.
15%. At the middle school level, we often have students get significant assistance on projects of maybe parents, and that can inflate grades. So, projects, take-home projects should not count for more than 15%.
Thank you.
Excellent.
I think as we're saying, I think back to my days in math. I wasn't a strong math student, Mr. Mutter, but I think back to my math days, and we do the evens in class, the odds for homework. We come in the next day, I get a check plus, check minus. End of the quarter, that's a quiz grade added up. That's what we're talking about. We don't want to have that happen. We don't want to have academic grades based on compliance. That's what we're trying to get away from.
And I just have one final one on that. When it says that the students will be informed, how will they actually be informed? And I'm just picturing someone saying that, oh, my grade should be this, whatever, and I did this assignment, and is there going to be some sort of...
I would say typically that would be posted. Speaking from experience, homework is posted, the teacher posts it on this board, the student has to record that in the assignment notebook or the agenda, or perhaps the teacher would have a syllabus or some way to communicate exactly what if homework counts, what it is and what it counts for, and that would be, again, an extension of learning assignment. It shouldn't be counting for something like practice, studying for a test, things like that.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? Oh, Ms. Willard. Oh, sorry. Ms. Sand.
2 quick questions. For this grading policy, is there going to be an overall grade so that the habits of a learner and the proficiencies in the various standards both enter into the overall grade? Or is the thought that that's not what's going to happen?
Right now, what we're trying to get to is you don't merge learner qualities with what the student knows. Historically, we did that. Student tries hard. Student passes an extra credit. Student needs a few more points. We'd kind of blur that. Extra credit, bonus points. We're saying that's separate. So, for example, homework would be a rubric, a 4, 3, 2, 1. Passes in all homework, that's a 4. Passes in most of the homework, that's a 3, etc. But the student may have, a C or a 3, it's proficient. We can't merge the two. We don't want to grade compliance or effort with the grade. That's the historic mistake in grading. We merge non-learning with a grade.
That, I understand that piece. I guess what I was asking is, I suppose then a person could do the student who knows all the content and turns in no homework at all, they could have a 3 for their overall, they just couldn't have a 4 for their overall. Would that make sense?
They could have a, go ahead.
If I could interject, they could still have a 4, but homework would be reported out as a learner quality, so on that rubric,
Yep.
that would be reflected in a report card. That's ready to happen at the elementary level with the revised report card for next year, which I think an example was shared at a previous meeting. And at the middle and high school level, where we haven't officially changed the report card for the 12-13 school year, but it definitely would be in place for the 13-14 school year. And at the middle school, for example, we would have a part of the report card would be including a rubric, which we've never had before, for something like homework, class participation, and effort.
Okay. So I think I'm not being really clear in my question. Is there an overall grade, so you have your habits of a learner, arrives on time, homework is completed, is prepared for class, is a positive contributor to class, all those. And then you have the academic standards, which that can multiply polynomials and factor who knows what and put all that stuff. Then are those, they all stand by themselves? Is there no ultimate overall grade for the entire course?
That's called the omnibus grade, the 1 grade. At the K-5 level, no. We have standards broken out, geometry and measurement, numbers and operations, all the different strands of math. At the middle and high level, it'd still probably be the 1 grade, but right now we're talking about going A, B, C, F at the high school, then a year later, 4, 3, 2, 1. So in Spanish, you may see a 3 in the future for Spanish, which is proficient. But ideally, if we could get to the place, we would have multiple strands of Spanish, which is more deep, but we're not there yet. The first step is to get off the 100-point scale. It's kind of like a whole progression. Even talking about this at the secondary level is very different. So Elementaries across the country already do this pretty routinely, so it's pretty standard practice to see 4 or 5 different grades for math or for speaking, reading, right, listening, art, music. Middle, high, probably the single grade. But alongside of that, as far as what we're looking for, trying to give folks more information. If you know your child has a 3 or is proficient, but they have a 1 for effort, a 1 for involvement, a 1 for homework, that's more information for you to know as a parent, or even as a school, right? A receiving school, that this student is not motivated, is not doing the work.
Ms. Wiley, or then Mr. Wood? Mr. Wood?
That's done. So if I understand you right, not 13, 14, but 14, 15, we're going to an all number system here at the high school. How's that going to affect our transcripts?
Right. Well, now, we know some schools that are doing this out in Colorado, one's Aurora, and they do a crosswalk to GPA. There's still a GPA, there's still, that kind of piece. I would tell you, this one policy will lead to a lot of other questions. I talked about in the policy sub, for example, only half the schools right now in the country are still doing GPAs. That's a conversation we're coming to have. Do you want GPAs or not? So let's have that conversation. A lot of schools are not even really doing the valedictorian and salutatorian anymore. They're doing a thing where all the kids that are in the summa cum laude or cum laude get together, they all write papers, and they pick the speaker for graduation, kind of the Summa Club. That's out west, you see a lot of that. So I think at the high school, we recognized we weren't ready to go. So the first step was just to kind of get in that direction. And we thought A, B, C, F, 4, 3, 2, 1 kind of got folks in that mindset. I'd also add the high school already grades a lot of pieces with 4, 3, 2, 1. Their anchor assignments and their big assessments are 4, 3, 2, 1 already. Right now, they just have to convert those into a 100-point scale. It's really odd. We have this kind of square peg in a round hole thing going on right now. We're trying to get everything in space. We teach standards, we assess standards, we grade on a 100-point scale right now. That's the problem. So to answer your question, it's a year away. That's the idea, yes, but we have some work to get there first.
So this wouldn't interfere with the child's or a student going to a college, because, I mean, how would they get their, I'm not following that.
Like I said, schools that have done this still have GPAs. They still have, if you think about it, 4, 3, 2, 1, a 3.5 GPA is kind of similar to a 3, so it's almost synonymous with what we're talking about here. So it's not a big stretch to do a conversion, but we do that, and the schools I've spoken to care more about the high school profile. What's the high school like? How rigorous is it? What kind of courses they offer? Not so concerned, because the high schools admit to me, a B in one school could be very different than a B in another school. They have no way of knowing what a B is. It's so subjective, they will say, I can't even measure that because it's different. Because homework counts here, this, and to hear that. So to them, they want to know what kind of product is historically turned out of Cumberland. What's that look like? High school profile is where they go for that.
But if you look at an honor student or an AP student getting a 4, and then a transcript of an A1 getting a 4, a college recruiter's not going to know the difference that this person.
This conversation, we're not taking away a weighted GPA yet. That's still on the table. Weighted GPA conversation is still there. So the honors level, AP, still gets more points. I'm telling you down the road, that's a conversation to have.
Thank you, Ms. Wiley.
To piggyback on what Mr. Wood was asking about, how would it impact the use of rank, or not use of class ranking?
Right now, I think the first step would be, we have the conversation of, do you want to explore the idea of keeping weights or not? And then so goes rank, really. It's kind of the same conversation. But I think that's another whole year-long conversation. We wouldn't do that suddenly. If Cumberland ever did decide to do that, you wouldn't start that to like the current class of 2019 or whatever. You wouldn't be doing anything radical like that. That'd be a slow introduction.
Mr. Wood, my understanding is that most, if not all, colleges, they're getting various grading models from different high schools all across the country, and they take whatever the high school has, and they usually have their own conversion for weighting the student in terms of admittance and things like that.
Anyone else? Thank you. All set? Is there anything else on the superintendent's report? I don't think so. All right, chairperson's report. I do not have a report, but once again, Dr. Thornton, I didn't speak to you the last meeting, and I didn't speak to you before this one, but could you update us on the list there that we were currently potentially on the redistricting?
Certainly, the bus, or the map went up today, the final map is up. Durham is still having difficulty producing a clean copy of the streets. We're working with them almost hourly. At this point, I don't want to publish a street list that's still not clean. We still have some errors we're getting through, so we're going through it street by street with Durham, but it's right now, it's every hour we're working on this. The map went out today, that's the map, and the streets are to follow. The bus routes themselves, they're working on that, and we're giving them bail times to work on to get those different pieces. So we should have routes shortly as well.
Okay, thank you.